Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here bright and early on a Thursday. Appreciate everybody that could join us and all the hard work that the team's put in for today's presentation. You notice a few changes. We're going to go through those changes, including how we're going to run the meeting because we do only have an hour and a half. We're always focusing on the priorities. The goal into next year, we're not changing our priorities. Surveys that we keep putting out around ESSER and community needs from our students, families, and our staff continue to indicate that we're in the same, or we continue to have the same needs as a district. So we're going to continue to focus on 5 priorities and the board superintendent goals. We're going to continue with the SGS strategies. These things have not changed. As we move into next year's budget, we're going to continue supporting the strategies that we've supported this year. Again, I want to thank the team. There's been a lot of work. It's that time of the year where we're running and gunning to put information together that makes sense and to give you as much depth as we can as you make decisions, because we are making decisions that will impact next year. Today we're going to have each area present: technology, our physical plant services, human resources, finance, and as always, we're going to go into next steps and what you can expect to see from us and the group next month when we meet again, and as we continue through the board work sessions. I want to talk a little bit about cadence and norms. We don't normally do that at these meetings because we have 2 hours, and it seems like a lot of time, but what we've learned is that the 2 hours goes by very quickly. The information that we have today is deep, and it should prompt questions, and we welcome the questions. Today, the board performance planning meeting, you know the cadence. This is all the work and all the time that you all give us. Today, we're at the board performance planning meeting. The next session you can expect is a board work session, where again, we'll go into more depth and address any questions that maybe we don't get to this morning. Our operating norms, I'm not going to read these to you. We seek to understand, and you're going to see a model of that today. We've changed the structure a little bit. We're going to ask you to give and receive feedback amongst the group. We're also going to ask you to, right here, we're going to establish a protocol for this morning, just for the sake of time. So this protocol will allow all the presenters to deliver the information. What does that mean? We kindly ask that you let, for example, Mr. Greathouse is going to start. Sometimes we have questions that he may answer during the presentation, so we ask that we present the information and then start jotting down questions. You'll notice that on your table you'll have a pen and some notebook paper, or some paper, a note card, sorry. So those questions, so you don't forget, we don't want you to forget questions. Again, we want to answer as many questions as we can. And I'm standing and blocking the camera. That's great.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Man, that's great. That's a good way to start. Thank you. Wow, okay, that threw me off the loop. So we're going to deliver the information. We're going to have an intercession though. So for 3 to 5 minutes, we're going to pair and share. Notice how you all across from each other. You should be able to have conversations. If you need to reach an SLT member or the board has conversations, hopefully this structure will let us have a little bit more meaningful and a little bit more interaction. So we'll go about 3 minutes with discussions, and then we'll answer questions for about 2 minutes related to the topic. So Mr. Greathouse presents. Let's ask Mr. Greathouse some questions. If we don't get through your note card with questions, it's okay. When we finish at the end, if you're able to give us a little bit more time, we'll address those questions. If we cannot, for whatever reason, get to the questions, we will put them in the board update as we normally do. But we'll take your note cards and make sure that you've got all the information that you need. If not today, by probably Monday, because it'll give us a little bit of time to put the request together. But that's kind of what we want to discuss today, because an hour and a half seems like a lot, but it's going to go by fast. Okay. These are all the intended learning outcomes. I'm not going to read them to you. Each presenter will go through, but you'll notice that we have a packed agenda for this morning. And we will start with Mr. Greathouse.
Good morning.
Good morning.
What I'd like to do this morning is simply go through some of the items that I've shared with you throughout this year. Some of the items that we, over the last year and a half or so that I've been here, that we've embarked on and engaged in, and give you some idea of the level of completion on these big projects. Number one is the network. The network was has been and is still in process of being updated and upgraded. It's a huge project, and so this simply lists some of the things that we've worked on this year and some of the things that we're going to have to work on in the next year as well. So switch upgrade, that actually started before I came on. It's a very lengthy process to replace all of these devices at every campus, and we're about, I think as of today, we're about 2 campuses from being completed with that project. That's going to give us the access to an increased amount of bandwidth potential in the future over the last outdated switches. Access point upgrade. We've provided the latest protocol for access points, wireless access points in the classrooms, with 1 campus still needing to be completed, and then all of the office spaces also need to be upgraded. So that's why you see where we are there. Wi-Fi bandwidth upgrade, moving us up to our full 10 gigs for our classrooms. That has been done just before assessments. So the next step of that is going to be making sure that all staff get moved over to that increased bandwidth. This is going to make working a lot better for everybody in accessing resources. The next big part that we've got to get under us is what we call UPS, which is uninterruptible power source. That part of the project for our network stability is crucial. We in Edgewood ISD have a considerable amount of what I call micro power outages. They happen, we blip all the time throughout all of our campuses. And when this happens, oftentimes network equipment goes down. And when we install these UPS devices, it'll be enough of a battery backup for our data closets so that when we have those blips of power, our switch equipment will not go down. And then when the power comes back up, we don't have a delay in service. Number 2, devices. This year we've successfully rolled out 5,000 Chromebooks to all secondary campuses, and this effort has contributed to a much better environment for learning for students. The devices, the battery life is 12 hours on those. They don't have to constantly switch them out to be charged. And for the assessment environment, there are also considerable perks. We're looking at doing this for elementary as well. In elementary, what we did this year, and this reference is number 4, is because they have iPads, we did purchase keyboards for those iPads. Since all state assessments are online this year for the first time, we wanted to make sure that the elementary students had as much screen space as they possibly could to take that assessment. So we purchased keyboards that attach directly to the iPads. But what we might want to do, I think, would be much better for students is for 3rd through 5th grade to also have Chromebooks. Again, that battery life is key. If a student is going to sit with an iPad for 6 hours or so, the iPads are even reaching the end of a battery life being on nonstop for 6 hours. We don't have that issue with Chromebooks, so we'll be investigating that as we go into the next year. Esports is another big and exciting opportunity for our students to engage in competitive sports locally, and that is one of the areas that we are bolstering and purchasing devices for as we speak. Infrastructure upgrades, number 3. We are about, I would say, just almost halfway through what would have been, again, this is a project for updating projectors that would have happened prior to or during the pandemic. It's when it kind of started, when everything kind of shut down. So we've got a considerable amount of AV installed at schools. We still got halfway to go on that to make sure that all learning spaces have all the best opportunity for students to learn with equipment in there. So that's classroom AV. Campus intercoms. We audited all of our campus intercoms this year and are in the process right now of getting them all repaired. And that will go into into the summer. I hope to have them all repaired to the best of their ability. They're ancient, before going into next year. And we have 2 campuses that will be getting completely new intercoms, as the old intercoms were not repairable. Under star support, again, I'm going back to referencing sort of number 2. These number 2 and number 4 kind of bleed together. But making sure that the best device is available in the classroom. Again, this year was Chromebooks for secondary, and then those keyboards for elementary. And then we did the bandwidth upgrade for our students to increase the bandwidth and ensure that they've got enough adequate bandwidth for taking the assessment. Cybersecurity is number 5 here. We've got antivirus working. We've got endpoint protection really working. What we have witnessed in the last 3 months where cybersecurity is concerned is we've been able to catch everything that's come through pretty successfully. Some of the things that really aren't a cybersecurity risk but are just irritating, you'll see them in your email. Those do get through sometimes, when they want you to call and give you money. Hey, I need you. It's really not you. And so a lot of that's training our staff to look at the sender and make sure that email address is something they recognize. And then we completed a cybersecurity audit, and we're working through that right now to deconstruct that audit and put action steps together. So that ends my presentation for technology checklist updates.
Let's take a few minutes to discuss if there's any discussion. If not, we can go straight into questions. Let's take a couple of minutes.
Okay, on the power supplies, my biggest concern is the power supply for that building over there, Garrow, because that goes down, and it makes the whole network go down. Where are we at trying to get that to a position to where we don't have to worry about? I know you have batteries, but battery backup is not sustainable, especially for a large facility like that.
And that's a very timely question. 2 weeks ago, we had the DCC went completely down.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it all went down. We do have a battery backup that is quite a bit better than we would have anywhere else. The battery backup that we have there is as big as a shed. And so when it went down, we went in there, started, at what point do we take down equipment? And that's really why you have a battery backup. And to your point, that doesn't really provide enough power, right? So you have a battery backup so that all of that equipment has to be brought down in order. Because if you don't, then it doesn't come back upright and stuff gets corrupted. So it told us we had 30 minutes, and we waited, and we got 45 minutes out of that battery, and then power came back up. But to your point, we are going to need a generator at DCC, and we're going to need a generator at PD as well. So those are the things that I have in the works. I don't have dollar amounts to those, but if you know anything about generators, they can be costly. Those are. We've got to do some other network things first. I mean, if we do this right, we would only need a generator at DCC. But there's a lot of other configuration that has to happen. We have half of our district getting their network from DCC and half from PD, and that's not really a great network. You need to have them coming from one place, and the ideal would be that we've got it coming from DCC with all of that backup, with PD being what we call a failover, right? In case something at DCC went completely down, then we would fail over for just critical services. It wouldn't even be a full-blown district failover. So all of that has to be constructed so that we right-size what we're going to purchase. To your point, yes, we're going to need to look at that.
I have a question. On these Chromebooks, at the end of the day, when the students have been there all day, who's responsible for charging on these Chromebooks?
They have each classroom is set up with a cart. So the idea is that when a student is in that room, they can pull those out of the cart. When they're done in that class period, they put them back in the cart, stick them back on, go to the next class. There's a cart there. They pull out their Chromebook for that class if they need it or don't, log back in, plug it back in. So they're always in a state of being charged. That's the ideal. We are in transition. And so sometimes when I think we may at some campuses still have Chromebooks being charged in the library. Not school-wide, but some of the ones that haven't been transferred to carts yet.
Okay, I don't know why, but I was under the impression that the teacher at the end of the day had to do all that, not only overworked.
Yeah, no, that's a lot for a teacher, and so we definitely, that's something a student can do, certainly.
I've actually witnessed it, when my granddaughter, they pull the iPad in so they can sew something, she takes it back to the cart, plugs it in, that's it.
All right, okay, yeah, I was just wondering about
Yeah.
that. I didn't want to, overwork our teachers.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
I've got a couple more questions.
Okay.
I posted this to Dr. Hernandez about the external Wi-Fi, the hotspots that the city provided.
Yes.
A community resident was having problems with theirs, and she thought she wasn't able to get back on with her student, I presume. And she was told by somebody in Memorial that that contract closed and it's no longer, those are no longer functioning. But I presume they were still functioning, that hotspots were provided by the city.
Right. So, first of all, I'm sorry that was an experience that our community really was having. That's not something that we want to see,
Right.
happen. And we do have hotspots available for them.
Okay.
We have 100 hotspots available for students if they need them. We also have some other, probably better means of getting internet access into the house now. Now that our towers are up, we can give them a city device if they're in that range. We also have another cellular system, and we can actually put something that provide a little more internet for everybody in the house than just a hotspot. So that's one. But we do keep 100 loose hotspots available for students if they need to check out. Now, it's secondary. If a student needs a device, they can check out a Chromebook. And that Chromebook comes with cellular service on it. And that's the idea, you've got, we were handing out laptops, and then we were handing out hotspots. And of those ones we had 1,000 that were from the city, and I think 1,000 from Region 20, I want to say. So we had 2,000 hotspots, almost $300,000 a year worth of service that we've been able to delay having to really pay for. But many of those were not, they were not active. Many of them were lost. And so we just pivoted to a better solution with the Chromebooks and then also with 100 hotspots that we do. But if you know that community member, if you can get that information to me, we will reach out.
Okay. And I thought we had talked about we were going to replace all of the intercom systems.
Can we save that question for
Okay.
the next round?
Okay.
Please, do you have it written down, Mr.
Yeah,
Gerard?
okay.
Can we capture it somewhere?
And also, Mr. Guerra, that question you asked me, I shared it prior, we're gonna put it on the board update for all seven
Yes.
to have it. So that in case any of you get approached, you guys don't have an answer that you can share with somebody. So, and that's a.
Yeah, and we'll get that. That'll be the
Yes.
first question we get to you after
We
the.
have a lot of.
I'm sorry? Yes, so as soon as you finish, we'll go to the next. You want to reference something?
Yeah, I want to have it now.
You got it. So as you start, Mr. Williams,
It's just one piece in there. Well, just give it all to us. I'll figure it out.
Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, board members, Dr. Hernandez, and colleagues. That's right, yeah, colleagues. Okay, so I'll get on the other side so I'm not blocking the camera.
I already did that for us all morning.
Right. So, one of the board norms is seek first to understand. I think that's the number one board norm. So you guys, I'm quite sure, know that Stephen Covey, the 7 habits of highly effective people, that's one of his habits, or one of the habits. So I'm gonna take from Covey, like the board took from Covey, and I'm gonna say, let's begin with the end in mind. So that's why I'm giving you the numbers up front. And see, Mr. Hernandez, he gets an A. This is actually the slide that I want you to start with. I'm sure if you can find this slide, this is the end in mind. This is where we're gonna start. And so, like any good episode of The Twilight Zone, they show you the end, they show you some kind of climactic part of the show and get you on the edge, the thriller. And then there's like 2 weeks prior, a year prior, and then they show you how that started. So that's what I'm gonna do. You see the big climactic piece, all right? We got that big number out of the way, all right? Now we're gonna see, how did we get there? So let's, do a little music, do. We go back.
You would have told me already queued it up.
Yeah,
I know, I
would've had
don't
it
wanna
in.
overwork. So we go back, and let's see how we started and how we got here, right? So here's the process. We go from campus to campus, and we go from facility to facility, and that's what we mean by identify facility. So we identify a facility. So let's just say XYZ school, XYZ campus, right? We go to that campus, and we do what we call a facility walk, a learning walk. On the instructional academic side, we call them learning walks. So I took that information and that protocol and applied it to PPS. And so we do a facilities learning walk. Now on that learning walk, we have a member of that campus leadership team. Normally the principal, assistant principal, and whoever else they want in that cadre with us. We have someone from PPS, normally the PPS manager and one of the facility support coordinators, myself normally. We have a representative from technology on the walk. And if it's an innovation campus or 1882 campus, we have the OP, the operating partner, someone from their cadre, and we walk the campus. They give us all the information. This is a listening tour for the PPS department, the operation guide. It's not for us to say, you need this, you need that, we see this over here. We want to hear what they have to say. So we're doing a lot of writing. And if they ask us a question, we'll clarify something and give them some information. But this is really for us to glean information from them. They give us the information. They may say, hey, we need a whole brand new school. We don't argue, we just write it down, whatever they tell us, right? So that's what that learning walk is about. Then we have what we call a maintenance huddle. And the maintenance huddle, we now sit as a cadre of the PPS team because in technology, because there are some things infrastructure-wise that we may know that need some attention that we'll just say the campus didn't recognize. And so we put all of that information together and come up with something with what you have there as some needs. And at that time, we sit again as a leadership huddle with some members from SLT, also members from PPS, and now we start putting these things in priority order. Okay, so once we have that list finalized, that's what you'll have before you, and we'll go through it a little bit. At that point, as monies and funding is available, we come to the board with those different priorities, sometimes in a group, sometimes one at a time, as needed. And if there's funding, and the board has an appetite for it, it's approved. And then the last step, we go out, we get the contract procured, contracted, and we make it happen. Okay? So starting, so if you, again, looking at this, you'll see the first thing that we look at, or not in this order, but in the order that's on the PowerPoint, we look at parking lots, we look at windows, we looked at the elevators, fencing, take a look at doors, look at roofs, different types of flooring. Again, this is district-wide. HVAC, we look at plumbing, painting and facades, restroom renovations, and then you'll see something on your list that says other, kind of like miscellaneous stuff. That what falls into miscellaneous? Maybe we need a marquee. Marquee needs some upgrade. Curb appeal, you know, add some shrubs and flowers, things like that. So that's what falls under other. And you'll see there's a number there for other. So, again, the last piece of this process is just basically making it happen. And then those are the main categories of what projects look like with, again, with some numbers that give you an overall idea. Now, also in your packet, you'll see different pieces broken down into different type, a different way of categorizing this. So, let's say you're looking at this sheet, okay? This sheet, again, it shows the maintenance needs, it shows it by category and by campus, okay? If you check out this sheet, it shows all of those projects that we just talked about. I know.
I can't turn too far.
Let me put it on this side so you So if you look at this sheet, it shows the maintenance projects broken down individually by priority. So when you see it, like our number one priority on this list would be the major HVAC project at Brentwood. You go down to, let's just say, number 25, you'll see that we ranked Las Palmas exterior door sets is at number 25. So I'll just give you some time to peruse each of those. And if you have any kind of comments or questions, I'll give you a few minutes and we'll try to get those answered.
I got a question. You know, this is a lot of work y'all put together. You know,
Yes, sir.
is there a way that we as a board could get an update? Say you start a project and you're halfway through, 3/4 way. Is there a way that we as a board can get an update? So we'll ask the question, I don't wanna go, I don't know.
Okay, absolutely. The answer, your short answer is absolutely, sir. When we start a project, I can start putting that in the Friday board update to say, we commenced the project on XYZ date, we're scheduled for completion on XYZ date, and let's just say it's a project that takes, I don't know, a month. Then I think it's reasonable that every week I can put something in there to tell you kind of where we are in that process, whether we're still on time or not. I'll give you a good example. Like right now, we're working on some things over at the warehouse, okay? We had to put some stanchions in there and a catwalk for HVAC, because it's on top of that one piece that has that lip. We were expected to finish that within a week. That would have been something that I probably wouldn't have sent to the board to say, hey, we started on the project. I probably would just wait until that Friday and say, hey, we completed XYZ project, because it wouldn't even been a week worth of work. But it's turned into about a month's work because we're waiting on equipment. And so, for HVAC and for plumbing to finish that. That would be something that you could expect me to say, we started this, and here's the original timeline, due to whatever the circumstance was, here's where we are, and here's when we anticipate finishing. So, looking at this priority list, those things that come off this priority list, I can definitely do that. And any other thing that the board has already approved, that's been brought to our attention, through the board meetings, I can bring that up too. If there are some, projects, such as emergency projects, like the, one at HR, I think you were not getting information from it, okay? Not that I put it in the Friday board update. I think what I did, I put it in the update that we had, a situation over the inclement weather break, Christmas break, I believe it was. And then I think I just put in there that, hey, we're working on HR. I don't think I periodically updated you to say, this is where we are, this is where we are, because that took about a little better than 2 months to complete. I think I only just gave you the original initial issue. I was updating this group, but not the board. So I see that as reasonable to update you.
And the reason I say that is because, you know, we know, I mean, you know, we sit here and listen, we know that what you guys are doing, this is great.
Yes, sir.
But we get asked questions, and my job is to defend all of you. I know you're doing a good job. So I'm gonna defend you to the teeth, but I wanna have some ammunition too.
Right. I just want to make sure that when I commit to updating the board on projects, that is one that we think is gonna take a while to do. If it's one that I felt like is gonna take only a week or two, then I would think that it would be okay to just either not put it in a board update that we even did that project, or put it in a board update that this is something we completed this week, or something like that.
Right.
We
But
completed it in time.
But if it starts growing, a project we thought was gonna be a week, winds up being 3 weeks, or maybe forecast out to be on 6 weeks, then I probably should update you, so, that's what I'm trying to get at.
And board, let me, first of all, thank you, Mr. Williams, for the question. I do, yes, I agree with you, I think it's reasonable. Probably not weekly, but the rest of the team here, I just sent you an example that I've been waiting to use, on how we can probably accomplish the recommendation from Mr. Gomez. There's another district that I saw was doing that. They're doing it for bonds. Those are major projects. Those are projects that last 1 to 2 years. But we can learn a little bit from how they're doing things. We may have a project that goes 3 to 6 months, or 3 to 5 months. And so it lists the starting date, the ending date, the cost of the project, the scope of the project. And I think that's a great starting point in terms of just sharing information that goes out to the board, but it can also lead to future conversations when we start getting into facility cleansing and things like that for our constituents. So it's real easy to do, but I'm sure we can accomplish that message.
And all that does is create trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so the fact that they can trust us that, you know, we're doing it.
Yes, sir.
All right.
So the ask for today, though, just to be clear, and I'm gonna, Mr. Williams and his team did a phenomenal job putting this together. The only thing that I added last night, and I didn't update Mr. Williams, so this one's on me. You see those yellow lines? This is really critical, and I really want everybody to see this. It's on this document. You got it, sir, okay. Those yellow lines, if you think back to the way we adopted the budget this year, right? You saw $10 million for maintenance of facilities and/or upkeep. But anywhere you need to into that verbiage, because we have a lot of needs. That's just to give you an idea, board, of when Ms. Bentley wraps up and puts numbers together, this is how you would probably see it. And this is, I want you to notice that $10 million, that's what you approved this year, it doesn't get us very far down the list. Right? So there's a combination of things that can happen. We continue to apply for grants, and Ms. Bentley's gonna go over that. I don't wanna prolong that, but I do want you to notice that that yellow line, that's what it means. If we allow $10 million, that's how far down we get down on the list. And for every few increments that are in a few $1 million. So that's, when you review this, that's what you will see. And Ms. Bentley will tell you how it'll look like in the budget here in a moment. And then here you have another cross-reference by campus. Right? So when you look at it by campus, because there's been a lot of conversation about facility usage, et cetera, when you look at it by campus, it tells you where the projects rank for each campus, or each project that's on there, if that makes sense. So when you're reviewing these documents on your own, and you refer to them, that's what the numbers on the side mean.
And board, as you keep those, when you keep those and you review them, by all means, any questions, obviously, you start in our office and then we'll go from there. But I did want you to have time to just look at these things on your own away from this meeting. And again, if you start with an office, we can move it on site. Mr. Hernandez, you're
Yeah, so you're asking to approve the whole amount?
I'm not asking,
Or we
for approval.
recommending, we already.
I'm not asking for approval for any of the projects or the budget for the projects. The purpose of being here today was to lay it out for you so you could see what we're up against in Dr. Hernandez's words. And then if monies were available, and let's just say out of that 24 million, the board had available $8 million. You would now look at that list and be priority-wise and could say, Williams is probably gonna come now and say, from $1 to $8 million, these projects would be able to be accomplished if the board had an appetite to approve such.
Okay.
And Mr. Hernandez, just to be, thank you for that question, just to be clear. So yeah, it establishes what the district needs are. It also establishes the money that we have to work on those needs. But what I do want to be very clear about is, although we're ranking these things, and obviously this falls on the administrative side of functions, obviously my lead person on that's going to be Mr. Williams. And so when I ask you to go away and look at these, I definitely want to hear your input because you're out in the community. I will bring that input back to our assistant soup, both of these here, and say, here's some recommendations we received. In the same manner that we would anywhere, but at the end of the day, we'll fall on the operations side and say, okay, where are we going to spend our money? Because some things, and the reason I say that is because things happen in real time. Right now, we could be in here talking all calmly and cool. He gets a call, the system at Brentwood just blew up, that's it. We may have ranked things, but if we have to have an HVAC system, that thing's moving up.
Right.
And so in real time, sometimes we may plan for things, but we have to move things up expeditiously. We just want to have a blueprint. So this also goes back to your comment, Mr. Williams. When we're out in the community, we can say confidently, yes, we have a master plan. Yes, we have a list of items that we're working on. And if somebody says, well, I'm over at LBJ, how come we can't get any help? Well, we have other items that have come up. And so that happens through your board update. So it's constantly keeping you in communication, giving you information you need to respond. And of course, the wild card answer is always, if you can't respond, then you know what? Let me follow up with the superintendent. We'll follow up with you. Because usually that's your.
So at this meeting or the next meeting, where you're gonna have like a recommended number, if it's not the full amount, you're gonna have like.
So at the next workshop, we'll talk a little more about it. And then we're gonna have another performance planning meeting on May 12th. She's gonna talk about this at the end.
Oh,
There's
okay.
4 more opportunities after today. to keep explaining what items need to be included in this year's budget. You know, when you guys started today, I wrote myself a question. I'm gonna share with you. You know, as we frame this conversation, I want you guys to think about, this is the question I keep asking myself. What information can we discuss with our Board of Trustees that enables EISD leadership to adopt a budget that emphasizes personal learning, increased focus on student achievement, social emotional well-being, and equitable access to all EISD programs and resources? It's a very broad question, but everything you're going to get over the course of the next 4 meetings and that you've been receiving since back in February has been the answers to this question. How do we focus on these 4 areas that encompass instruction, operations, HR, obviously finances, you can't do anything without finances, and all the major areas that we have in the school district. And so this is all information so you can make a decision to support the budget at the eventual adoption on June 6th or 7th? The 6th. So it's just tidbits of information for you, but we're connecting them for all of you. Okay? Is that about it?
And Ms. Benedict, I don't want to, Ms. Benedict, we're going to hand off the baton now to Ms. Lorino, but as we transition, Ms. Benedict's going to cover some of the questions that you just asked. Mr. Hernandez, and then,
I should have wrote it down, I'm sorry, I should have.
oh, no, I wrote it down for you, no worries.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Good job.
So thank you. So good morning, board members, Dr. Hernandez, leadership team. Also wanted to recognize you, see a new face in the room. This is Ms. Cantor, Senior Director of Human Resources. Some of the areas that we're addressing today are really deep into the human resources piece. So I wanted to make sure that we have. So as Dr. Hernandez mentioned, as we come into budget season, of course, this is a big area, right? This is a big piece of the puzzle, which is our human resources. So just want to give you some information on different things that we look at when we're looking at the budget and what are some of the implications when we look at it. Not just now that you hear about technology, we hear about facilities, but now human resources, which is normally anywhere from 75 to about 85% of our budget, right, when it comes to staffing. So the areas that I'm going to address today are going to be the staffing summary, kind of where we're at. I'm targeting a couple of areas, fund sources that I will get into to let you know kind of why we're targeting those areas. The stipend update. So not only do I come to you and ask you for approval of these stipends, but we also monitor them throughout the year. How successful are they? Is it something we're going to continue? Is it something we need to adjust? Is it something that we need to recommend for the following year? And again, is it targeting those areas that Dr. Hernandez mentioned? Of course, the focus on instruction. Are those stipends really focusing, and are we seeing good outcomes, you know, from those stipends, right, that we're recommending and that you have approved? And we're also going to look at the other area is our health clinic. How has that benefited our employees? Is there a change that we need to make? Is there adjustments that we need to make to our contribution? So those are the areas that I'm going to target. First, of course, is our staffing summary. This is a big, it's one slide, but it has a lot of information, right? So here, of course, we asked you to approve our budget. The 101, as you can see, is a fund source of our child nutrition. That right now has, for salaries, we have about 2.7 million. Then we add the benefits. We always average about 20%, give or take. It's anywhere from, I say 12 to about 20% on our benefits that we guesstimate on there. Then we have current staff and stipends a total. So 3.3 are out of our child nutrition. We also do have vacancies. So I wanted to make sure you got a full picture of the whole fund source, kind of as you go along, how many vacancies we have in that area. Then we have our 199, our local budget, which is the one that, of course, we come and ask you to approve through our budget process. We have 35 million, 35.6 million. Here's our benefits, including our stipends, which and these stipends, most of these are going to be your local stipends that we have for athletics, for band, you know, for teachers that are teaching outside of their area, or any extra duty that they have that normally is an addendum to their contract. They teach during the day and they have extra items that they do after school. That's a lot of our local stipends. So overall, our local budget that we have right now currently sitting at, that we do have expenditures is 44.5 million. We do have about 7.4 in vacancies right now that we're sitting in right now that have not been able to be filled, or that we had an individual in there, maybe resign. So just wanted to show the vacancies that we have in there.
Or we've intentionally not filled.
Or intentionally not filled. In some cases, because some areas we're looking at, and we're looking at every single position, right? As enrollment declines, you know, is the need actually still the same? And so we really have to look at every single position as we move along. So this budget season, we're looking at every single vacancy. Is this something that we're gonna continue to carry in our books as a vacancy? Or is it something that we're gonna tweak and make some changes and make adjustments to duties that individuals are doing? Or are we gonna just really look at other areas of servicing our students, maybe through different programming, okay? Then now I have our 2XX, which is normally our federal funds or grant-funded positions or grant-funded fund sources. The reason I'm highlighting these is because they all have end dates, right? As we know, we have ESSER in here, which is our, ESSER 2 is 281. That one's going to be ending already in September 1st. Okay, so as you can see, when we look at our 281 ESSER 2, right now, we have budgeted about 1.3 million that we have staff that's in this category, okay? The following year, we're gonna have ESSER 3 that will be being eliminated, and right now, we have a total of 29 million. So what does that mean and why is that important? Well, these individuals that are in here, or these programs that are in here, are going to have to be absorbed in our local budget, back into our local budget. So that's why I think it's important that we see that. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean these individuals that were here were new positions. Some of these were reclass positions that were currently in our local budget, right? Because a lot of those programs that we could use have to be those core areas, you know, because we were trying to eliminate a lot of that learning gap that we were lacking at the time. So we could fund some of our core area teachers. So that doesn't mean those teachers will be eliminated. It just means we're gonna have to absorb them back in our local budget. So when we're approving the budget, these are some of the things we need to consider as we're forecasting for the upcoming years, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. And we have 274, we have Gear Up. This is 3 individuals that have been here. This is through the University of Texas. The Gear Up program has been supporting at the high school level. They run our Dream Centers. All of our seniors kind of applying for scholarships, looking at different applications. This is one of the programs that the high school has. We have other programs that have been there. We have Advice Texas. We have the Texas Education Partnership Program as well. These individuals were slated, but this program will be ending on September the 1st. Yes, September 1st of this year. So those individuals, right now, we have 3 that they're kind of in limbo right now, trying to see what we need. So we're in communication with the high schools to see how we can support them. If it's gonna be something that we need to bring back, or is it something that we can sustain with the individuals that we currently have coming in to support our students? So just trying to see what we can do. So these are all different areas that we have. Then we have T-Class, that's gonna be ending in August 30th, 2024. Right now, we have 914. These are our residency teacher, our clinical teachers that we brought in that have a paid residency program. Specific for those areas, right? These grants were specific to that, T-Class and Gear Up. ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, we had a little bit more wiggle room, but it's important to see where we're at with these funded programs, because again, these are gonna be programs that have to be absorbed back into our local budget. So this is just really critical. Right now, we have about 8.2 million sitting in vacancies across the board. That's from our child nutrition down to our ESSER funding. And it's all areas. We have some teachers in those vacancies. We have some professional staff, clerical staff. I say it's about 20% from our staff, our teachers, about 20% in our clerical, in our paraprofessionals, because we are struggling to hire paraprofessionals. And we're looking at our compensation plan to see what we need to do. Some of them are leaving full-time positions to go to subbing, because our subbing rates, you know, are pretty high compared to everybody in the district. Because at the time, that's what we needed, right? We were struggling to get subs. We are currently doing really well with our sub rate, because we are filling up quite well as far as what we're doing. So, I don't know if we want to take a few minutes to absorb this and kind of see, because this is big and this is a big part of our budget, similar to what Mr. Williams just presented on the facilities. But see how kind of everything comes together. We have staffing, we have facilities that we need to repair, you know, technology to continue the learning. So this is a really big piece, and I wanted to make sure, try to break it down as best we could to kind of make it where we could, you know, get a good understanding of it.
Why don't we take a couple of minutes, guys, for you to talk to your learning partner, to talk about what you're looking at. Because, and you might have already said this, Mr. Reno, but our staffing costs are about, what, 83% of our budget? Probably. So let's see, think about, we have 100% of which, 83% of it's going into salaries. You just heard from our technology chief, you heard from our assistant super operations. So of that remaining 17, it's competing against these other needs that we have. And this is obviously the most because we spend more money on people, and that's obviously the important thing. We can't do this without people. So maybe take a couple of minutes to talk to your partner about what you're seeing. If you have any clarifying questions, we can answer those for you. Mr. Chavez can help you.
Give you an idea what of our vacancies
So those bottom four, I guess this question is, the bottom four, when it ends, then we had to start being forwarded out of the budget, right?
If we keep the positions, which a lot of the ones that are just our regular core teachers, that we moved to ESSER to utilize that, because that was one of the things we could use as a scholarship, was teacher retention, keep staff employed, to help with those learning process, so we moved a lot of our teachers to ESSER, so they won't be able to change. If somebody's hired specifically for, ESSER support, they do their job, it's grant funded, it wouldn't be what it's on the grant funded. So,
That's good, that's good. That's an opportunity to have this here. Continually looking for grants to make it go.
Yeah. And so the vacancies, the 8 million in vacancies, is that going to be moved somewhere else? It wasn't spent, right?
well, but we've spent for that, so what's not there is sub cost.
Subcost, okay. Was it what
And
you
we've
had to
already
use
used
half?
some of the vacancies
Oh,
to, part is kind of 10 million.
And the rest, like the rest of the money would go to fund that whole space?
If it's at a local, it goes to fund balance, if it's our federal, yeah, federal way, so.
Oh,
The vacancies.
okay. But the local, that's ours, so we can be fully flexible, that's what we're region. All the other stuff is
Yeah, 199 is what y'all approved.
Okay.
Food service, job nutrition, local, and Sir. So as we move along, not sure if we have any questions that we want to, right now, or if you want to write them down on your next card, anything that we can do to clarify, because we know that this is a really big ask when we bring our budget, right? And it is a big process as well, so we want to make sure. I know one of the questions I heard was, so what happens to the 8.2 million? Does it get absorbed back? Of course, the local does, the 281, 282, that rolls over into the actual grant. We're trying really hard, or we will get everything out of ESSER 2 because it's ending. We're gonna roll it over to ESSER 3. Okay, so we wanna make sure that we clarify that. One question I did hear is, this vacancy amount here, what happens to it, right? Well, the local money, of course, that's gonna be there. We wanna make sure we have more flexibility. We'll go into the general account. What we did not account for here, and that would probably be something that we'll bring to you later, but the sub cost. But because we have these vacancies, we have subs that are in the classrooms, right, filling in these vacancies. And so we're looking at that because we really, if we don't need to have the subs cover classes, we want to make sure we have highly qualified teachers in the classroom. So what can we do to make that adjustment so that we can make sure, right? Because when we bring the raises to it, we hear already from the surrounding districts asking, and I think San Antonio's saying they're gonna give, the largest raise in the district, the district's history, so I wanna make sure that we kinda get that, because we may have to make some adjustments. I know we bring the compensation plan to you multiple times. We have seen where we have some individuals that are in our regular paraprofessional positions, like our aides, and they can make more money if they become long-term subs. So they resign from their paraprofessional position, and then they become long-term subs. I give you one example. One was making probably 112, I think is what they made minimum with the raise. They became a long-term sub at a secondary. Long-term, they make about $185 to $200 a day. So they're making more as a sub. You know, where we want to try and see what we can do to hire permanent employees, provide them the benefits, and then be able to, to assist them with even money through the summer, right? Because then we can analyze their income. The subs do not get money during the summer, so. We're analyzing that. We're getting some, assistance from a third-party provider to kind of review all of that, to see what we can do to make sure that we do have all of our positions filled, including our paraprofessional positions throughout the year.
And Ms. Rial, when you look at these vacancies, I want to be really clear. Anytime we hire from here, it's increasing this number. So these vacancies are not included in these totals. Where we have opportunities moving forward is how do these positions fit into this picture? If you think about redesigning the work that we're doing, and there's a lot of opportunities. As we start thinking into next year that we're absorbing this back into local, that's a huge impact. So what can we do? These aren't people yet. And that doesn't mean we're going to stop hiring. There's some things that we cannot stop hiring for. But what it does mean is that we're going to scrutinize how these positions look when we do bring them back. In a teacher, we're not going to have a classroom that has 22 students and not hire a teacher. That's out of the question. But there are other opportunities where we can review duties, etc. And anytime we hire from here, it adds this number. So we need to be really critical, because here we're not hurting anybody, right? We don't have a person yet. So just being critical about how those positions come back, because we need people. There's no doubt about that. It's the how, the pay, and restructuring and making sure that we make wise decisions moving into next year as we think about absorbing some of that $29 million into not this year's budget, but in 24-25. So we're doing this really cautiously.
Okay, moving on. Stipend update. So just want to, as I mentioned before, we're going to review some of our stipends and kind of where they're at. So first, this is our perfect attendance status. So the top portion is what I did is I went from January 2022 to March 2022. This is what we had for teachers and paras. This is a direct impact on campus, right, and direct impact on instruction. Back in 22, we had 317 individuals that had perfect attendance. So this year, right, I came up with maybe a perfect attendance incentive. At the time, we thought, well, this will help so we can get more people in the classroom. They won't take the days off. Well, I'm realizing that this is probably not a good stipend, right? Because it's actually less this year in 2023, right? For whatever the reason is, we are seeing that there are individuals that are still taking time off. Whether it's the social emotional piece, they need extra time off, but we're gonna reassess that perfect attendance incentive at the time. This at the bottom is going to be our all staff, which includes clerical, it includes administration, nurses, PD, because we included all staff in this, right? Again, you can see there was a little bit of a gain from 563 last year to 588 this year, okay? But I really want to focus. I mean, we need everybody here, but here's where we see the biggest impact. When teachers are not in the classroom, the students are not getting the instruction, right, that they need. So again, analyzing, we do analyze, we continue to analyze to make sure. We started this in January of this year. We did it for a semester, so again, this is probably something that we're gonna eliminate for the upcoming years because I'm not seeing that there's a great impact. I just wanted to share with you that we do monitor and that we do want to make sure that we provide information to you as we progress. The next one is over the ratio. This one was the one that we proposed to have as a stipend for those teachers that were over the ratio. And if they chose to keep the students, you know, anywhere from 1 to 3, 4 to 6, or 7 to 9, we were giving them additional pay for those students that they were servicing. So we did see a benefit. We had 7 that were paid out in December. We had 1 from Perales, 3 from Las Palmas, and 3 from HBG. So how does that really impact us, and how does it really impact the students? So if these individuals had not chosen to keep the students, we would have had to open new positions, not know if we could fill them or not, right? Because we're struggling to have teachers. So these students kept, or were in the classroom with a highly qualified teacher. So they continued the instruction. But not only did the students benefit, but we wanted to make sure that teachers were benefiting as well. So we were able to provide them a little bit of a stipend to allow them, or to, I guess, to recognize the fact that they kept the students and they were a little bit over than what the other teachers were having in their classroom. So it really helped because it was really a struggle. We had, I believe there was 2 teachers who did not want the stipend. We had to open the positions, and it took us a while to be able to fill for that position. So we did have some students that were with the highly qualified teachers for a longer period of time versus if we had just kept them. So that's another area where we can look at the process, where if it's a choice, maybe during the time until we fill the position, we can provide the stipend to the teacher versus it just being, okay, it's a teacher's choice. Because through our District of Innovation Plan, it does indicate that the teachers have to agree. And we asked the teacher that they want to go ahead and keep the over the ratio amount, and so they agree to do that. So not only do we ask them, but we compensate them as well. But we could just kind of tweak the process a little bit more to make sure that our students are being serviced accordingly during that time. The next one I have, this one is really exciting. This was through our T class that we just kind of mentioned. Our clinical teachers. We have clinical teachers through UTSA and Texas A&M San Antonio. This is one of the programs that we have. We have 29 teachers here. We have the Aspire program, which is our administrators program, and we have our Grow Our Own. These are our paraprofessionals. We have 4 that are now serving as teachers, that we're providing assistance to them as far as mentorship and different areas so that they can now grow and become teachers. The Aspire is our administrators. These are 6 administrators, they're aspiring administrators that are going through our Texas A&M San Antonio. But the really exciting piece, we just had our ceremony for the clinical teachers, and Ms. Montana did an outstanding job building relationships. So we had 29 teachers. All those 29 clinical teachers want to come back to Edgewood. They want to stay in Edgewood. They've already been here for a whole year, and they want to come back. So this is really exciting. We already had one because we did have a vacancy that became open at one of our high schools. It's our social studies, and I'll show you his testimonial. But he's already committed to coming back. We've already given him a contract for the upcoming year, and he's already kind of ready to fill in. So this is really, really exciting. So thank you for approving the T-Class grant. It is really something that I believe is going to benefit us. As we continue to monitor and we look at different individuals, whether they're leaving because of relocations, or they're leaving because they're changing career paths, we know about 29 right now that are probably going to be leaving. I'm sorry, we're about at 26. And we have 29 clinical teachers already in the making. Now, they don't always match up, right, like secondary and elementary, but we know if we give letters of intent to these individuals, which we're hoping we will this week, because we have a big job fair that they're being required to attend this weekend, so we can hook them right now. We're going to do that this week. So it's really exciting to see that, because we go out to job fairs. At the time, we're recruiting, we're trying to explain to them, we're trying to sell our district. This is already sold. These individuals are already sold. They're here, they want to be here, and they want to come back and service our students. So this is a really good opportunity for us. And this is a testimonial. These were testimonials that the teachers, the clinical teachers themselves put together. These are items that we have. Ms. Montana did a great job as far as showing these slides as the ceremony was going on. We do have a video testimonial as well that will be updating you through the board update this Friday that you will get. But this is the individual that is coming back to JFK. He says, my experience at JFK High School has been the most eventful, exciting, and thrilling time of my entire college career. As I completed my degree at Tamusa, I began to fear that I was not prepared to handle all of the responsibilities of a teacher, or even what I meant to be an effective teacher. Now, after spending close to a whole classroom year under the tutelage of Mr. Lagos, I am learning from my students. I now feel ready to become an effective teacher anywhere in the country. So we hooked him, we got him, so he's coming back. And this one I won't read to you, but this is an individual, this is our bilingual. We have 10 bilingual clinical teachers, and bilingual teachers are hard to come by. Anytime we get a bilingual teacher, we're gonna hire them. So we have 10. We also have 5 that we know for sure are no longer gonna be returning next year. So we have a good segue with filling those positions that we need that are really hard to fill positions. So this is an individual as well, had a great experience over at HPG with Ms. Castillo, and so she's super excited to come back. So you can see some of them. All right. Now we'll go to our clinical, because I think I'm running short on time. So another area that we look at is, of course, not just staffing and how we're gonna fill positions, but of course is our health clinic and then our contribution. How much do we provide for our employees as far as their health insurance? Current agreement, most of you know we were paying $120 per visit for our employees that attend, that go to the clinic. We get an invoice on a monthly basis from the clinic. We make sure that they're part of our group plan to be able to attend. We pay on a monthly basis, and I'll give you an idea of where we're at. Some of the changes that we're looking at, the contract are effective this school year. Because we had COVID that came up, now they were having to provide telehealth services for our employees, because when COVID hit, they weren't allowed to come into the building. And they wanna add a $25, now they wanna offer the telehealth visit, since they saw that that was happening during COVID, they wanna offer it now. So our teachers they're in their campus, they can't make it physically to the clinic, but they need services, they can call in, it'll be a $25 copay for telehealth. So we won't pay the $120, we're gonna pay the $25 for them, okay? So that's gonna be an adjustment that we're looking at. They're now including, of course, COVID testing. They're not deleting any of the coverage. They are going to add coverage, but this is gonna be self-pay, so you can go to the clinic and receive these services, but these services are just not included in our contract to be paid out of the $120. So if they provide these services here, that's gonna be something the employee will have to
Through insurance, it'll go
Right.
through their insurance coverage.
correct through their insurance right now. Oh, or if they don't have insurance, they can call to see what it is that they're gonna offer them. But we are exploring other ideas, as far as other offerings. So clinical usage, October 2022, we had originally budgeted $240,000 be spent. For the 2022 school year, we only spent $114,600. And this is a breakdown by month. You can see our biggest months were November, February, and April. No, I'm sorry, January. Yes, January. So, and that was 22. Then looking at 23, you can see the drastic change. Right now, we're only at 14,000, 8,000, and 6,000 for January and February, where before we were at 14 and 13. So, I'm hoping, yes, I'm hoping vaccines, individuals, are healthier, so that's a good thing. So right now, we're at about 14,000. So what are some of the things that we're looking at now, so we can make sure, as we're considering and we're looking at the contract, of course, we've been contacted by, I know, H-E-B is opening now clinics, we have Walgreens who's opening clinics, and now we have leeway to talk to University Health, and we are required by contract, if we want to break our contract, we just have to give them a 60-day notice, right? So as we're looking at it, and our risk manager is looking at a lot of things, so right now, if individuals show up to this clinic, we pay $120, right? So what we're gonna ask them is, now that this year they became, because we went through Blue Cross Blue Shield, now they're part of our network. So if we go, those individuals that attend and have a PPO plan, sometimes our copay are $30, $40 versus $120. So we're going to negotiate and see if they want to offer that for us. Instead of paying $120 for every single employee, that they look at the type of coverage that they have. If they have coverage that requires a $30 copay to see their PCP or a specialist, then we just pay that $30 or $40. We don't have to pay the full $120. So that's just something we're still kind of negotiations this year. Not sure if that's going to be something they agree with, but that's okay, because we have other options that we're going to consider as well. The other piece that we look at is very similar, but this is where we're at, and I wanted to give you a good visual of what we have. We have 976 employees that participate in our health insurance currently. We pay $4,800, right, because we give them $400 a month, okay, so in 12. So overall, we contribute $4.6 million for health insurance for our employees. Okay, so I just wanted you to see the dollar amount, because I don't know if it's something that Ms. Pam, as we continue on and we're looking at the budget, can we afford to pay a little bit more? Is it kind of where we want to be? So it's important for you to know the number and kind of where we're at as far as the contribution when we're considering the budget. And I believe that is it. I'm not sure where we're at.
You were out of time, no,
I'm sorry.
I'm just kidding.
Please,
No,
if you
some
have
information, you have,
That was good.
that's really good, thank you.
Well, one point to note on that, is remember that we renegotiate our health finances in January. They don't start in July, they start until January, just in case you might have forgotten that. Okay.
All right, good morning, everybody. All right, so I'm gonna talk a little bit about finances and where we are currently, and then some projections and looking at where we might be for 23-24. So at budget adoption last June, we adopted a budget with a $10 million deficit that was coming out of fund balance. I've recalculated and looked about where we are with ADA, enrollment, and where we are with our spending. I'm projecting we're gonna be able to put $3 million of that 10 back into fund balance. And I'm gonna say it's a conservative estimate. Hopefully it'll be a little bit more, but I'm always a little conservative. So I'm estimating our fund balance at the end of June to be almost 57 million. So I know the question's gonna come is what are we required to have? TEA requires you to have at least 3 months operating in your fund balance. So easy math, we would need to maintain at least about 25, 26 million in our fund balance to be in compliance with TEA. So some historical information. So here's the historical enrollment starting with the 18-19 school year going to where we are currently. And this is snapshot data, so that's the last Friday in October, so it's consistent data. So you can see if I took those 5 years and averaged out the decline, is we're losing 410 students a year, every year. And right now, the way it currently sits, I know we're in a legislative session, but the way it currently sits, the basic allotment, which is what we receive minimum on every student, is $6,160. Of course, we get weighted funded if it's a state compensatory ed student, if it's a special education student, a GT, a bilingual, all those add up. But this $6,160 is basic allotment, and if the child's here 100% of the time. So that equates to about $2.5 million we're losing annually due to declining enrollment. All right, so here's some historical attendance data. And again, I started with this one. I started the school year ending 2018. And you can see what our ADA was. PIA is percentage in attendance. And ADA, of course, is your average daily attendance. And you can see in 2018, the first 6 weeks, kids were coming to school 95% of the time. First 6 weeks this year, 88.5% of the time the kids are coming. That equates to money. And if you look down at the very last one, the totals, so for 2018, we were just about 93% in attendance. 2022, 85.6. Of course, the current school year is not over. So that's just a reference point, just to see, again, how our kids are not coming to school, and I mean, that costs us money. Yes, sir?
Let me make a connection for you, Board. The reason this is important right now, every year it's important because obviously you get money when the kids come to school. But I want to connect this to the legislative session and what's going on. If you're following me on Twitter, you probably know that Tuesday I spent all day at the legislative session. I got to go speak on behalf of a couple of things. The first thing being the basic student allotment. The basic student allotment is basically what you get for every student that comes into school. She just referenced that about $6,000. What we're advocating for is that allotment has not been touched in more than a few years. It also does not take into account inflation and what we're experiencing right now in the schools. The other thing I want you to take into consideration, because you're seeing every school district going and whether it be through board members or superintendents, is request that we now be funded more so for enrollment as opposed to ADA. Because we are so reliant on students coming to school. Folks, that what we've been doing, we have Dr. Martinez, Gracie Martinez used to be at JFK. She and her team are now looking for kids, trying to get them back into school. We're doing everything through innovation and trying to recruit kids back into the school district. So the work right now is to get students back into school, but it's not just getting them there, it's actually having them attend. And we're getting every kind of excuse for students not to come to a group. They don't want to come. I'll give you a real example. Monday, after Easter, our attendance date was 72% for that day. It was extremely low. And so those are the kind of challenges we're experiencing, but I promise you, every other district across the state, in Bear County, we're all experiencing it, every single district, everyone you can even think of. Attendance has become such an issue. Then you consider those students that are now going into the micro school movement, or they're or they're being homeschooled. I won't even mention charter because they're still out of school and they're getting funded. But the students that are staying home and getting funded at home, we're losing those kids. We have more than a few in Edgewood that I'm aware of who we just don't want them in the public schools, so we're going to educate them at home. And so we'll leave that there, right? But that is what we're up against. And so when you hear me talk about going to the legislative session, that's what I'm advocating for. That's one cost. The other cost is the safety allotment. You know, we have a lot of costs around safety. You've gotten a couple of texts this week, or one text this week about what's been happening in the school district. And so we receive, I'll remind you, about $70,000, that's it, from the state. So I got to speak to a couple of senators. What I didn't do this time is I didn't go talk to our senators, because they're going to be aligned with us. So I went to go talk to Senator Creighton, some of these other conservative senators, to include the lieutenant governor, who do not agree with us, but I'm looking for points of convergence that we can actually build off of and say, okay, look, we agree on this, and how can you help us, and here's how we can be effective with the money you give us, because that's where they're coming from. The belief is that we don't know how to use our money, true or not, and not just us in public aid. But that's a lot of the work that's going in right now with regards to helping us, because yeah, we're losing kids, and the ADA is not getting better. It is not. We're on average right there with just about every other school district in the middle to high 80s is where everybody is right now. And usually, if we're on a holiday, the day after a holiday, take it to the bank. You're going to see really low attendance numbers. So I just wanted to connect that for you.
Thank you, sir. All right, so let's move into our current budget season of the 23-24 revenue planning estimate. So I am anticipating revenues are going to be about $85 million, and that includes interest earnings. Right now, our savings, we're earning a pretty good amount. So that's what we're going to make, because part of that also goes to debt service. If the money is debt service fund balance, they get their interest. So this is just general fund of about 1.8. At one time with our SHARS, which is your school health and related services, we thought there were going to be some funding shortfalls there. It seems like they're holding their own, so right now I'm going to budget that those are going to stay steady. Our indirect cost revenue is higher, again, because of ESSER. We have all that ESSER money, and we get to charge indirect cost on that. So indirect cost right now is running about 12%, so that we get to charge ESSER for that. We get to put it in our general fund as revenue. So after ESSER goes away, our indirect cost will also be going back down. And we're going to continue to utilize ESSER to fund and support the considerations. So again, here are our considerations. Y'all seen these buckets several times. What you have not seen on there is the return on investment, ROI. You'll hear us talking a lot about that going forward. We went to some ERS training in the fall, and they provided us with some tools to evaluate our return on investment. So the senior leadership team has spent really probably since November, December up through March reviewing everything that we've purchased with ESSER. What was the intent? Did we meet the intent? If not, what are we going to do different? Because we've got to start evaluating that when ESSER's gone, what did work or was successful, then we're going to have to try to find a way to fund that to keep it. And if it wasn't successful, then we're not going to do it. Maybe we had a duplication of services. So we spent a lot of time reviewing that. And so I think the other night at the workshop, somebody had mentioned the return on investment. And I thought, well, maybe y'all weren't really sure where we were coming from. You hear it all the time in the finance world as far as investments in that on your money, but not necessarily in our world on, whether Air Tutors was successful or not. I'll just pick on Air Tutors. But anyway,
An
we
example
looked
was
at that.
Cindy's return on investment without attendance.
Yes, absolutely. So anyway, you'll probably continue to hear that term as we go through the budget cycle. So I just kind of wanted to explain what we had done with that. All right, so just some considerations. I know in the past, we had talked about if we wanted to increase the medical insurance contribution, so I did easy math, $25 times a month for, I just did 1,000 people, that's $300,000. Our beginning teacher salary for librarians and nurses and teachers currently sits at $58,000. Our departments reduced requests by 10%. And again, that doesn't mean we could reduce the electricity. When we get to the fixed cost slide here in a little bit, those obviously can't be reduced. I mean, they're fixed and odds are they're probably going up. Continue to fund the maintenance projects that Mr. Williams discussed, and maybe look at a raise versus one-time payments. So salary considerations, if we did a 1% salary increase, easy math, that's about $1 million. And about 45% of it would hit the general fund, and all other funds would be about 55%. Where if we did a one-time incentive option, if we did $100, that's about $125,000. If we did 1,000, that's 1.25 million. And one thing, the reason we're presenting these is once you do a salary increase, that's for forever and ever. If you do one-time incentives, obviously, it's for that time, it's not guaranteed past that. So, just something to think about. Yes, sir.
Board, another thing for you to consider, so thank you, Commissioner. Yes, once we do a raise, it's permanent, so we have to keep up with this. Here's the other factor I want you to consider, it's come up in other years. The top number of the percentage of the raises affects someone's retirement age. A one-time incentive does not. So that's another factor that I want you to consider. So if we give a raise, that includes every employee that is in the district. And ultimately, it's gonna affect what they retire with. Because, you know, you retire and, depending on what bracket you're in, some people it's top 3 salaries, some people it's top 5 salaries, the average of. And so these are factors that people consider, especially those that are moving towards retirement. Maybe when you're starting, you don't even think about that. But it's also our responsibility to consider these things. And so I ask you to consider when you go off. This is just one example. We wanted to give you real basic consideration. Like I said, we're gonna talk 4 more times before we ask to bring a final recommendation. But if it's 2%, you can do the math. If it's 3%, if we differentiate, a few years we've differentiated. Typically, officers and teachers get a little bit different than administrators do. Okay, so there is some differentiated recommendations we'll probably bring you. This just kind of starts your thinking on your own, or what you think you want to recommend. And of course, those conversations you can have with me as we're running around, or as I see you in different places. Okay?
Got it?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
So, if you give somebody a raise, now you gotta get them, charge taxes and all that, right?
Right.
But if you give them one-time incentive, are you still gonna do the taxes out of
They
that?
still have to pay.
incentive? You have to, right?
Uncle
On
Sam
the,
does that.
on the
So-
federal side, on the federal
Federal.
side, not TRS.
Correct.
So, it would behoove us, with the comment that Dr. H just made, to give a raise. Wouldn't it be, I mean, if you're weighing the two, with that being said, you're gonna charge taxes regardless. So, in the long run, the raise, right? I'm thinking out loud.
Yes, I mean, like Dr. Hernandez said, you know, the raise is gonna go towards, if they're getting close to retirement, it's gonna go to that. But also, once you do the salary increase, you have to be able to sustain it forever and ever. You know, you have to think past 1 year when you give the raise, because you can't take it back. You increase the beginning teacher salary, or increase the teacher salary by $1,000, then the next year you can't say, no, you know, besides going through board action to freeze salaries, but that's painful.
I know you've been at the legislature. Are they talking about teacher increases? I don't recall hearing.
There is conversations, Representative Talarico out of Round Rock, who used to be a teacher, is recommending that there be a $10,000 raise or $5,000. It has not made it out of any committee. It's dying in the committees. The other thing I want you to consider, Board, is that when you hear on the news that the state is saying they're gonna give $5,000, what they do is they slap that onto the total amount you get. It's not an extra 5 to cover their promises. It's just, on what we're already giving you, go ahead and give everybody $5,000 immediate raise. If we do that, it becomes permanent. That's more than 1% or 2%. And so that's politics, obviously, because a lot of times, you know, this happened to us the first year that I came, it was 18, 19. There was talk that, oh, all teachers are gonna get 5,000, and that's what went out in the media.
Right.
We never got any addition. So again, on the basic allotment has not been touched in a while. I would ask you to consider, the other factors to consider are this, inflation. You're getting hit in your personal life with inflation. Things cost more. The basic example I always give is, eggs used to be, a carton of eggs was what, $3? Now it's gone up to $6, $7. Gas, things like that. Also consider the competition in Bear County. We have other districts that are gonna be looking at, and superintendents, we talk, hey, what are you considering doing? Right now, it's somewhere between one-time incentives, well, that's how the conversation started. Then it's gone to 1%, 2%, 3%, and then now I'm hearing from my neighbor here, they're looking at 3 to 9%. But what they're not saying is that it's across many years. It's not all at once. That won't get reported, but nonetheless, our folks hear half the story. So, oh, they're getting 9%, what are we getting? And people make decisions off of that. And so, again, this is just that early conversation for you to consider multiple factors as we keep bringing recommendations. And then ultimately, we'll come down to one final recommendation. And we'll say, here's what I'm recommending for a vote. And we'll get to that right before then. You were gonna say something there, I know you're asking.
Oh, no, I'm writing down.
Oh, okay. Other questions from you guys? Okay.
All right, so a little while ago, I kind of talked a little bit about the fixed cost, when I talked about departments and that cutting 10%. These can't be cut 10%. I mean, our property insurance, that's gonna go up. Utilities, of course, are gonna go up. Telephone, maintenance tax note, that stays flat, but I can't cut it 10%. Enterprise lease, we're still estimating it to be about the $500,000. Copier leases, I think we've got a 5-year lease on that. Frontline, again, that's a fixed cost, it's the same amount every year. And technology and security enhancements, onboarding employees, and recruitment and retention, so. All right, so what we're still waiting for to be able to provide information, and we will not probably have, we'll have the estimated property values by April 30th, so we will be able to incorporate our estimated values in to help generate our funding. What we probably will not know, since we're adopting the budget on June 6th, they'll probably still be in legislative session, and there's probably going to be a special session.
Yes.
So just understand that going into budget adoption early June, that once legislative session is out, then we'll have to take what changes they made, and we will be coming back with an amended budget.
Yes.
Probably August to September after the shakeout from the legislative session. And then also at that time, we would have the certified values from the appraisal district, although they've usually been pretty good with their estimates. So.
They're looking at a couple of legislative sessions. I didn't even touch on the educational savings accounts, or AKA vouchers. That is a hot topic right now there. And so there's a lot of changes already coming. I know one that has to do with safety and security, that's an unfunded mandate that we're all going to have to do. And we've been proactive. The one is all schools will not have to have a silent alarm. Ours do. So, but we've been doing that on our own dollars. And so it's coming now as a full mandate with not one penny to it. So I was there when they passed that. That's already made it out of a vote. Appropriations, it's ready to go. And so the 12 superintendents that were there, half of us we've already done this, the other half were like, I don't know where we're gonna get money. And so, you know, those are pipeline things that are coming down.
Thank you.
We did questions in between, so we'll wrap up, and I think we're gonna have 2 minutes for questions, actually. So what are the next steps? What can you expect in the next few meetings? This is the recurring theme that you're gonna hear all year. Rethink, redesign, recommit. We talked a little bit about that and how that might look like in staffing. How we bring back, we've got fixed costs that we can't do anything about. So we've got to get really strategic over the next few years. The term ROI, it's not gonna be the last time you hear it. There's gonna be recommendations that we're literally having to take back. Mr. Trevino gave you a perfect example. We tried something to keep attendance high for staff, because it's equally important for staff. If we don't have the teachers in classroom, we talk a lot about the students, right? But we don't talk about the staff. This was an attempt of trying to do something different to keep our teachers in the classrooms. That clearly didn't work. But those are a lot of the things that we're gonna reconsider. So the rethink, redesign, recommit is gonna be a recurring theme throughout the year. What that means is you're gonna keep seeing, things for like the demographer. What changes can we expect? Are we still, the last demographic study we have is from 2017. It's pre-COVID, or right post, yeah, it's pre-COVID, sorry. The one that we engaged in 2019 was COVID, and so we don't really have a good gauge. Are we still in the same, we had a lot of families displaced, right? So are we still in the same declining state, or have we changed that a little bit? So just knowing what numbers we're looking forward to, or looking to plan moving forward. Facilities usage review. We've had a lot of conversations about how we use our facilities, and if we need to rethink what we're doing with our buildings. So that's in the works already. We've already had a couple of meetings. Those meetings are obviously gonna have to be extended to other people, to include community and/or staff. So that's already in the works. And of course, Ms. Bentley already touched on legislative updates. Those, again, Dr. Hernandez mentioned, legislative sessions come with funded and unfunded mandates. So in this case, we're looking to be funded by enrollment as opposed to ADA. And we're also looking for things like security buttons or panic buttons. Are we gonna have mandates that we are gonna have to absorb into existing budgets? And you're gonna see recommendations for near final budget adoption. Mr. Hernandez, you mentioned something about, are we asking the $24 million right now? Well, the answer is that would be ideal, but we don't know what we're gonna be able to afford. So as these things start peeling back to include the consideration whether it's gonna be raises or not, health insurance contributions or not, like what does that bottom dollar look like, and what can we do that's responsible fiscally for the district, for staff, and for students. So the next step, we're right there already. I mean, it's going fast. This was a calendar Ms. Bentley presented a couple of months, or really, back in January. We're now here, April 13th. We still have a ways to go to finalize numbers, but immediately following, we have the April 20th board meeting. We don't have a lot of discussions normally in the board meeting, but here are the opportunities. We have a board workshop on the 2nd, another performance planning meeting on the 12th. Then we'll have the meeting on the 16th, one more workshop before final adoption on June the 6th. So things are coming really fast, so all this information that you're getting, please review and shuffle questions back, because we are asking you to make some very heavy decisions. So with that, we conclude the presentation. Any other questions? I think we have a few minutes. Well, oh my God, we're right at 9:30. But if anybody wants to stay, you have time to give us and questions to ask. Mr. Guerra, you had at least one question that we didn't answer. I don't know if you're ready to do that now, or we can put it in the board update as you wish.
Well,
It's a lot.
It's actually goes back to,
Technology, I believe.
no, well, technology, we had that intercoms thought we were already replaced.
Yes, sir.
those.
Okay.
I have another question
Yes, sir.
for Mr. Williams, and this is, okay, this goes back to my first time around on the board.
Okay.
Roosevelt Foundation. We went through a lawsuit and sued this company, and we got X amount of dollars. But we've done what we could, but my concern is the city has not changed that wall, that drain thing. They have done nothing to repair it. And what is the state of the Roosevelt Foundation? Because that was it was sliding towards that.
I don't have a new evaluation of it.
Okay.
I'll put it in my notes, and we can check to see what the status is now, because there's been a number of years. There's been about at least 7 or 8 years since it's been looked at.
Right.
But I can do that, sir.
But that is a concern with facilities.
Thank you.
Yes, we'll look into that and get back to all of you. We'll put it in the board update.
You had a question here.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Can
sir.
you tell me what maintenance tax is?
Back, maybe 2018, 19, that's
About
when y'all did the
2016.
retrofitting of all the lighting.
We did. Thank you, Mr. Gomez. We had a energy savings bond that the board approved, and I believe it's 16, 17, so it's been a minute, for For the first few years, we structured the loan where we would pay interest only, and the interest is subsidized. We get about $400,000 to offset the interest on the note. Because we didn't go to the voters, and because it was retrofitting for buildings, the board opted to take those monies out of local funds. 5 years later, we started paying that $960,000. And it's really offset some of our energy costs, even though they're high, through the programs that Mr. Williams and his team implement, those savings, that's what we use to offset and cover that cost. So when the plan was proposed, that's what was the intention, to reduce the electric, really the utility bills, mainly the electric and the water, because there was several retrofits. That's what that note is. It's for those retrofits that we did. And honestly, we needed new lighting center. We needed to get some of those lighting into the 21st century. That was the way we were able to do that in one.
Cost saving in the long run.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Good question. Mr. Hernandez, do you have a question? No. Okay.
I wrote it down for later.
Okay, well then, I think.
Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.